I think we're seeing that, luckily. You and I are about the same age, so we sort of came through in it was like changing.
Yes,
you know, the vocabulary
absolutely.
was definitely changing when I was doing my degree. But I think people who get hung up on facts are fooling themselves anyway, you know, like even if you're reading a scientific paper, you're reading the scientist's opinion of what was important to include in this paper.
Exactly.
And what was not necessary to include. And again, this in and of itself is an opinion. And this is how we see these very skewed takes. Right?
Right. Which is a given in archaeology. And I think a lot of other ones as well, other disciplines, but I can only speak about my own. But at some point, it's like they forget that once they get, you know, they're professors and they're established and people read their articles, they forget that they don't have the final interpretation and that somebody else can come along and should come along and have a new interpretation. You know, in the 60s, there was this big movement called the New Archaeology, which like really, you know, and there's so many kinds of archaeology. There's political archaeology. There's, you know, archaeology that's really stuck on material culture only. You have religious, political, all of the different theories to understand humanity, including Marxism, Lenin, like all of that finds itself in archaeological interpretations. So really now it's okay to add in the heart and add in the emotion because we're there. I feel like we're there.
So speaking of the heart and the emotion, now let's get into Art Witch Academy.
Right.
What is Art Witch Academy?
So that's a really wonderful project that I started with two of my fellow art witches. So all three of us were just chatting one day, and we all have a different art practice and witchcraft practice. And so we were all saying how, it would be so cool to learn from each other. Because one of my art sisters, my art witch sister, Emily, she works a lot with goddesses, which I rejected for the longest time because it was like, in my mind,
too close to Catholicism or dogma, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But so I was like super interested in what she had to say. And then Caroline, she's really interested in symbology and symbols and using those like sigils and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I work with archetypes and the tarot a lot in my art practice. So then we're like, wouldn't it be cool if there was an Art Witch Academy? Caroline said that, and I said, well, now that you said it, we have to do it.
I mean, it's already named. Again,
totally.
We talked about the power of naming.
I think like 2 days later, we bought the domain, and then we were like, let's do this. And so we got together, and virtually, because they are both in England and I'm in China. Mm-hmm. And
how did you meet? Did you meet online, or are they friends of yours from the Commonwealth?
No, we met online, totally online,
yeah.
Through Instagram, and then we just like decided to start this project. So it's an actual academy. So we have semesters. We wanted to use trimesters, but then it sounded too much like pregnancy. So we just okay, we'll go with semesters. And so it's a running membership. And then when you go, you become a member, you go on the site. We have different rooms, like in an academy. So you have the seminars room where we have lessons. There's the laboratory where we have more out of the art journal sort of lessons. There's Her Story, where we have modern witches and also like art witches, basically. So we did a thing on Niki de Saint-Phal and also Frida Kahlo and her diaries, Florence Welch, so a whole different range. Yeah. We also have interviews with art witches that are contemporaries, our friends or people who inspire us. And then we have the broom closet, which is my favorite because it's shadow work. So we have a section for that.
Can you get into that, please? Because this is something that I feel like doesn't come up as much as the other things that you talked about. So dig in.
Shadow work.
Dig me in, archaeologists.
Oh my God, it's going to be so long. Shovel. So talking about bones, right? And singing over your bones and really digging deep. So for me, shadow work is so important. And I feel like I'm doing it all the time because my spouse is a diplomat, and so we are posted to a different place. So far, it's been China every 2 to 3 years. And so I constantly have to reinvent myself. But I'm an archaeologist. I really like to have roots, and I really like settling. So it's always been so hard for me to like pick everything up and start again in a place that I haven't chosen, and where I cannot work. I like to make roots. I need to make roots. So being unable to do that, I sort of have had to work on that part of me. So most of my tattoos concern that, like reminding myself, don't worry, it's okay to accept change, to let it come, and to let it be a part of you. And so I've been doing a lot of shadow work myself.
So for those listeners who have never heard shadow work.
Well, yes.
Yeah. What
Right.
what even is it?
So basically, like for me, it's addressing the part of you that makes you uncomfortable, or that has made you react in a way that has surprised you. So I know I'm very close to my shadow. I know exactly what it is. It has to do with not feeling like not being seen, or seen at the wrong time. And I've been working on it for the last 5-6 years easily. And it's not easy because it's very confronting. But it feels so good to let the light in to those dark corners. And so I really think it's a worthy exercise. And so in the broom closet, we have like self-contained lessons that are not too long, but that really allow you to start shedding light on that and then to go further with it afterward. I think it's like you gain so much when you do it. And like my hand was kind of forced for me the first time, because it's when I had to address the fact that now I did not know how to identify, because I was always an archaeologist, and then all of a sudden I was posted to Hong Kong and I had no idea what I was except for a mother, and that wasn't enough for me personally. And so why is that such a big deal? And it has to do with so much, like my mother, my own personality, my father, side note about grief and fathers who pass away. Like I listened to your episode where you mentioned that, now he's gone. So that part of it is gone. Like I had many issues with my father, and then he was just not there anymore. So why would you hold on to that? You don't need to, but you can work on what it has created in your shadow, and you can let that go with a ceremony, with a ritual, with an art piece. And so that's what that is all about. And for me, it's like, why would you carry that? And there's a huge part of that is like, it stops with me. It doesn't go to my kids. So that is my main motivator, is like to be sure that I'm okay, so that it doesn't reflect on my children. I mean, they have enough to be worried about with their upbringing, that I'm not going to bring my family shit into that.
And I think this is why we sort of speak out often. I mean, we try to keep it hopeful.
Yep.
But this love and light business and good vibes only, we speak out against this as often as we can, because first and foremost, that shit ain't healthy. Nope. And second and foremost, we think part of being a witch, I say we, I know Risa agrees with me, so I'm going to say we as a collective of two, we believe that protest is witchcraft, that part of being a witch is to make change, to affect change, whether that's personal, but also community care is a big part of it, you know, that being a witch means that you have to extend these, and in order to help, you need to know what the problem is.
Yes.
And if everybody's just love and lighting all the time and dying on the inside, then we're all just dying on the inside.
You're just doing that, let's all be clean and white and cerebral.
That's
you're
the
not,
same thing. Nice
You're not digging into the dirt.
Yes.
Okay? So that's what I like to do, in reality, in my job, but also metaphorically, is just go in there and then clear those cobwebs out if you can. And if you cannot, then go get help. Yeah. And it's totally okay. And it's number one to do that.
Yeah.
And like for me, I've been, walking with my shadow for a long time, so I know, but I still get really cool surprises many times because, we're put in different situations, and it's not because you really know yourself that you're not going to still react in a way that, because all of this is shaped by our childhood and we were talking about ancestors earlier, and there's so much that we carry in our bones also, literally in our DNA. Yeah. So I think that's also where it ties in with my science witch hat. But so Art Witch Academy is really like for us like a way of giving back. We also make it not too expensive because we want people to be able to have that resource. The
accessibility is important.
Yeah, it's super important. It was one of our core values for sure. And so the witchling, we call them. So our witchlings can like really choose which room they want to go into and which lesson they want to go through. Some of them are more hands-on, some of them are more emotion-based, and so they have like a wide array to really decide what they want their curriculum to be like. And that's what I love also. And we also have the library in which we put some book reviews and things like that. And so eventually there will be like podcast reviews and things like that also. Yeah. So it's like
podcasts too. There's
room for expansion. Yeah. Well, we did talk about it. We wanted it to be like the student radio. Yeah. And so everything's open, but it's such a heart project. And that's like what all three of us keep coming back to is that, even if we had one student or no student, we would be so happy because we each take each other's lessons. Yes. And really, and it's helped for me personally to go from any kind of dogma is bad to like, okay, you can allow some deities to come back. If like for me it's really important that I see them as archetypes, because anything religious, like I break out in hives. But it's been good for me to learn from my witch sisters, because I really was sort of closed off on that end, and now it's like opening all these new doors about even spell work. So art as spell work, that's my new thing that I just like. It clicked that that's what I've been doing. I don't do like, when you say spell work, I've never done that, but I've always done it in my art. Yes. But it's just like I'd never done it outside of my art journal. But every single spread I've ever made has always been with an intention behind it. And many times the intention being making me feel better and immersing myself in the process. So that's like a big part of this practice that's come to light from working on Art Witch Academy. Yeah, and it's something that, and again, we say this all the time, like you have these ideas, and we live in a world now where you can just make these ideas happen. Absolutely. The technology now, like Vanessa is working with people who don't even live in the same country as her. It's amazing. There are probably people listening to this right now who are not in the same country as us. For certain, sure. I know, what's up, rest of the world? You're here in Canada. And it's amazing to me, like as a child who was born in the late 70s, that I can sit in my house with this and do this, and you can too, all y'all listening. Like I love this idea of student radio that you came up with, and let me know if you need to partner with Missing Witches on this, because it's intimidating to say I'm going to start a podcast, but like I bet there's so many young witches, old witches of all varieties, who would love to just like get something off their chest for 15 minutes. Yeah. Without even like necessarily the like setting up a podcast and here's my RSS feed, but like, somebody talking into their voice memo and sending it to you and being able to like put that like student radio, like a community board. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like, and you can just like go and listen with like not the expectations of like a highly produced. Yeah, absolutely. Thing. Anyway, there's me, so like, many possibilities. Excited about your ideas that you have. I love it. I mean, there's so much. It can go anywhere, and you're right. We live in this fantastic era where all of this, communication, it goes both ways. We either get really close or we get really far. But like, it's amazing because also I live in China where information is controlled, access to internet is controlled, and even without that, we manage it. So that's really incredible when you think about it.
Yeah.
Also, we're really into emoji spells.
Emoji spells.
Yes, and that comes from Pam Grossman
Yeah.
and other witches who do it online. And we're really into it.
Yeah, I mean, this is like this sigil work. It's
Absolutely.
symbology, like I'm a 40-year-old woman, but I will use an emoji house down. I will put 30 emojis at the end of it.
There you go.
If there's something that I can't convey with words, but I can with 4 hearts, a rainbow, and 3 lightning bolts.
Totally.
Like, you know what I mean when I say 4 hearts, a rainbow, and 3
100%.
lightning bolts, but like, I don't know how to articulate that in English or even French or even
right.
Hungarian. None of the languages I speak have like a word for 4 hearts, a rainbow, and 3 lightning bolts. So I'm done. Again, this like condescension.
Totally.
That we find like against things that are feminine. I'm using air quotes here. Youthful. Especially, no one is more demeaned than the young woman.
Oh my gosh.
No one is more worthless and invalid than the thoughts of a young woman.
It feels a lot like it's what our parents said, oh, TV's gonna rot your brain. And now everybody's like, oh, social media is just the worst. And yes, there's some bad elements to it, but there's also incredible possibilities. Mm-hmm. And you have to have confiance in that generation, the next generation, and they're going to work with these tools and come to something better, and then they're going to tell their own kids, well, that's just going to rot your brain. So it's all part of the cycle, and it's okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing about tools that I think about is the neutrality of tools. You can take a hammer and you can bash somebody's skull in with it.
Yep.
Maybe you've seen a bashed
Case in
in
point.
skull, in your work you have. Or you can use it to build a house and look after your children inside the house. Like the tool itself is neither good nor bad, but what we do with the tools that get put into our hands is what defines us. Absolutely.
And so that's why like teaching and offering up these lessons to help empower people to delve both into witchcraft and their art practice has been so rewarding for us because when you see someone take your seminar and say, oh my goodness, you've unlocked something in me that was there all the time but I didn't know, or finally I can lay this down and not have it be a cloud over my head. Like these are things people have said to us, and it's been so moving to read these commentaries because that's kind of the end goal, right? It was like a bit selfish because we're like, we just want to learn from each other, but then like how amazing is it that other people can benefit from that and then be empowered to bring more ritual into their own practice.
I heard, I think it was Lakeisha Harris from Black Witch University, but somebody I heard for the first time recently this idea of, yes, a safe space, but also a brave space.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
That's beautiful.
Lakeisha was talking about creating a brave space for the Black Witches of Black Witch University. And,
I love that.
And yeah, I'm sort of like reframing this in my mind now. We always wanted Missing Witches to be that safe space, but now I want it to be a brave space.
Yeah, that is awesome. I have chills. That's really, really cool. Yeah, and that's what that is.
Yeah.
It like looking at your shadow, but like being given the tools. Okay, so like my daughter when she was younger had anxiety, and we were given tools to help her develop her own toolkit, so that she could master that and like be stronger in her emotional reaction. So I apply that to art making as well, where I feel out of control and I have no power or powerless or just like all over the place. And then I can come to my art studio, I can come just to my art journal. It doesn't have to be an actual studio. It can be the corner of a table, 2 crayons. Don't even need to have fancy supplies.
Even.
Yeah, totally. Pair of scissors or ripping, paper. That's very cathartic.
Yes. Oh,
and then just go for it and then let it go and then find through that process the release you need, which is totally witchcraft.
Yeah. It's so interesting to talk to somebody who, goes literally digging and comes up with these things, but is now doing this like very technological, like a completely different But both of these things are just so synthesized,
Yeah.
like in your being,
And
I feel like.
it really is. When I listened to that episode about the witches and labs, I was like, oh, yes. And actually, it's true what you say about that brave space. And I was talking about Art Witch Academy to a friend of all three of us. And she was saying, oh, well, this is a place where each one of you is seen as what they are. And I was like, I can't believe you saw that as well. And, my sister witches, they each have, Caroline's the tech witch, and then Emily is the goddess witch and the elemental, tree magic, all of that kind of thing. And then I'm like the archetype witch or the science witch. And then it's just so cool to have the space where you're not judged for liking both, the scientific part of it and also the magic part of it.
And again, there's also no hierarchy, like,
Totally.
you're the president because
Nope.
you do this. And
We're no headmistresses.
Yeah. And again, I mean, this came up when we were speaking with Pam, was that's one of my favorite things about the label witch, is that it's the least label-y label that ever labeled, because it can mean anything you want it to. As long as you know you're powerful.
Perfect.
That's it.
Yeah. But there is so much power in using it.
Yes.
And saying it out loud and not accepting the fear or shame or the stigma or all of that is attached to it, and rejecting that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I teach ESL, as you know, and some of our followers or listeners know, and I do hidden incantations with my students. When we start our classes, I will tell I am strong, and I'll have them repeat it.
I love it.
I am smart, because again, these are incantations.
Yeah.
This is magic. This is the alchemy of just our day making.
Yeah.
Going about the alchemy of making your day what it is,
Yes.
and saying to yourself, I am strong, I am ancient.
I am aware, I am open, and I feel like for me magic is opening yourself up to awe, to being in awe. That's why we say, oh, it's so magical.
Yes.
It really is.
It really is.
Yes, and if you stay with that childlike ability to be awed by something, then you're letting magic in. And then when you set about creating that state, then you're a witch. You're practicing it.
Yes. I mean, I wrote about this in one of our episodes. Like, I love knowing. I love science. I love knowing. But I also love not knowing.
Oh, yeah.
I also love a solid mystery that'll never be solved.
Yes.
And that's the human condition,
Oh my
I
gosh,
think.
yes.
So before we run out of time entirely, can you give our listeners, is there something that you want to leave them with, whether it's a meditation or a spell or an incantation or just something for them to think about, and then we'll drop all your links.
Well, mostly I would say it's kind of like an exercise, like an art exercise.
Great.
So for
Ooh,
me,
everybody, okay, everybody, get your pen.
yeah, actually, that's it. It's just the idea of transformation. Okay, and kind of like alchemy. So the way you go about it is totally up to you. But I really like the idea of checking in with yourself. So I used to do self-portraits. Now they're called selfies. But for me, there's a difference between the two. So if you don't, have access to a camera, a printer and all that stuff, make a self-portrait with words. What's going on now in your body? What's going on now in your mind? It can be a free flow, and just write it out on a piece of paper, in a journal, on a magazine, on somebody else's face, whatever comes to you. And then
Can you type it on your phone?
Sure. Type it on your phone. Why not?
Yeah.
The rest is the transformation part.
Yeah.
So if it's on an actual physical substrate,
Yep.
then burn it.
Don't burn your phone.
Don't do that. Or I was going to say put it in water.
Yeah,
don't do that with your phone.
Okay, so maybe it's best if you don't use your phone for
I don't
this
know.
one.
I think you could probably send it
Send
to
it.
somebody.
Or take a screenshot of it and erase it.
Absolutely. Or, color with the paint.
We nailed it.
There
we
you go.
That's what you're going to do. Okay. If
Use
you're doing
the
this on your
paint
phone,
function
yeah.
and then just cross it out. But allow it to become something else. So if you're spraying it with water, if you've used a non-waterproof pen, the ink will run, and then tear it and then use that to make a silhouette of you and then show what that transformation has given you. If you're burning it, use the ashes or use the burnt pieces of paper and then stick them all onto something else and then write what you want to feel underneath it. You can put the date if you want, but you don't have to. Yeah. But I really like this idea of like checking in. Yes. And then if it's not what you want it to be, then you can transform it whichever way seems fit. You can take that paper and bury it. If you have access to soil, if you're not living on or even then, bury it and then come back in a few months and see what happened to it. But just like let it become something else. I like the idea of transforming.
Yeah. So your homework, everybody, self-portrait, whether it be a photograph, a self-portrait, or whether you're drawing it or whether you're writing it down with words. Do that and then do it again with the future you, the better you.
Transform it.
The transformation, the transformed you.
Yes.
Because every day we can afford to let go of our egos and be a little bit better than we were yesterday, right?
100%.
So drop us your links. Tell our listeners all your links.
All right. So the easiest is artwitchacademy.com. You can also find us on Instagram at artwitchacademy. My Instagram handle is dans mon crâne, which means in my skull in French. And that's when I started back, really when Instagram started, I was on there and I thought it was a good metaphor for what's going on in my brain, but also my archaeologist side. And that's also my blog name.
Great. Yeah. So, of course, as always, we'll put all of these links in the show notes. But if you just can't even wait to get into our show notes, then go to artwitchacademy.com right now. I want to thank Vanessa and y'all so much for being here. Vanessa, it's just like a mind-blowing affair that you came up right when I needed you.
Listen, this is fantastic. I'm the one who's grateful.
I'm so happy to sit here and talk with you.
It was awesome. It allows me to go back to dig in my bones a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Dig up the past.
May you all go and dig your own bones and confront them. Confront your bones because they're with you. So you may as well have a good relationship.
Totally.
Don't ignore anything ever. Okay, that's it. Be a witch.
Just please take these broken bones, build them into your homes. Please accept these men bones and these pictures are laid in all seasons.
Season 3 of the Missing Witches podcast is brought to you by Foxglove Farm. Use offer code MISSINGWITCHES at checkout.